else? Okay, thanks.
I think I'm a pretty good problem solver, and I get myself into these mixes, and I'm like, oh dear God, how am I going to fix it? Elizabeth and I decided to go to a meeting Monday night, and it's been very hot, and it's been very sweaty, and so we were meeting at Casa, and I get out of my car, and I'm like, I smell terrible. Thank God I have personal care items in my car, so I reach in and get my deodorant. But it's this, like, it's not powder deodorant, it's that stuff that, like, melts. So I put it on, and then I have these giant gloves all over me. All right, well, that's okay. My handkerchief in there. I reached in to grab this handkerchief, and I forgot that I had eaten a piece of gum and kind of in a piece of paper. So I not only had deodorant all over my hands, but gum that was holding my thing. So I'm kind of happy I'm a good problem solver. It went sideways.
For all of our guests, that's actually a pretty mild story. So, Elizabeth, you want to try and top that?
No, these are under that. But the first, I have three of them. The first one, the Pompous Carnivores, decided that the burgers at Grinders in North Canton were very good, but they were not as good as Hot Dogs.
Yeah.
Number two, the Pompous Carnivores have a sub-chapter. It's called the Stamp Out Gringo Food Steak. And this Sunday, just by coincidence, we're going to what was it again? La Terraza in Brimfield, just a coincidence, and we are all promising to behave. The third thing is, after the pub crawl, we hear little things, and everything we do, it just seems someone was bitching or it wasn't good enough or something. I'm very sad, so I went to church and thought maybe I could find some inspiration in church. And the pastor just gave a few-minute homily, and by coincidence says, have you ever noticed the people that bitch the most are the people that do the least for their community? And I thought, yes, I'm so glad I came.
Any other happy dollars?
I have an encore to that. I forgot to tell you, when I went back and I had to go back out to my car, I realized that it wasn't me, it was the dumpster beside me that was smelling. All that.
I've got a happy dollar. This week, my wife, our daughter, and our granddaughter took a girls' trip down to the beach. My wife is happy that she's at the beach, and I think she's more happy about the fact that all her friends are jealous of the fact that her daughter and granddaughter would invite her to go. And I've had a nice, quiet week.
Any other happy dollars? Time for a song, Inky.
All right. Smile.
Smile. And the world smiles with you, sing a song. Don't be worried, just be cheery all day long. Whenever your trials, your troubles, and your cares seem to be more than you can really bear, then smile. And the world smiles with you, sing a song. Hey!
All right, 50-50, Debbie.
Yeah, you can draw the wedding.
Keep yours out.
Yeah, you feel right. 238-835. Oh, that's good. Okay, you are right.
Oh, way to go, guys.
Oh, I don't have the money.
You get smart with it. Yeah, give him the rest of the text.
You were right. I saw the money.
How much was it, Debbie?
$23.50.
$23.50. Okay, next week our prayer will be led by Jim Rivers. Our speaker will be Chuck Hurst, how to develop business success. This time, those that need to leave for work or a tea time, please leave quietly and we'll get a chance here. We'll introduce our speaker here in 10 seconds. Okay, our speaker this morning is Chief David Oliver. Chief is a 1985 graduate of Akron Central Howard High School. He was sworn in as a patrol officer with the Brimfield Police Department in 1994, promoted to the rank of sergeant in 2001, and became chief in 2004. Chief Oliver has earned a bachelor's degree in criminal justice and a master's degree in management and leadership. Over the last couple years, he has become an internet sensation with his Facebook page for the Brimfield Police Department and a book that he is writing. Let's give a nice welcome to Chief Oliver.
I graduated with someone here. We just found out, and I was sitting beside her. All right. And we have to do, is there a question and answer too, right?
Yeah, that's usually...
Oh, yeah, you don't get out easy. Good morning. Good morning. If you can't hear me, let me know and I'll talk louder. First of all, thanks for allowing me to be here today. This is the first group I've ever spoke in front of that I feel normal. After watching this entire thing this morning, I'm perfect. I fit right in. It is a pleasure to be here. It is odd that anyone asks me particularly, but a police chief in general, to come and speak. Normally people do not want to hear from police officers. We're trying to change that. I think we're doing all right with it, but we'll see how it goes. I do not ever, when I talk, prepare speeches. I'm adult ADD, and seriously, if you had me pay attention to a speech and try to read it, it would be an unmitigated disaster. I'd be out flying kites or doing something else in the middle of the speech, and you get nothing out of it. So what I try to offer is that every time you hear me speak is a new trip. I have no idea what I'm going to say, so we're going to get started in the vein of that thing. First of all, probably why I'm here is obviously the Facebook page. If you haven't been on Facebook, there are people who aren't on Facebook. We understand that. There are people who don't have the internet. There are days I wish I was one of those people. But by and large, it's been a huge success for us. As was stated earlier, I started with Brimfield PD in 1994. It was not the place to work when I started there. The department was largely dysfunctional, to be honest. We had some officers who, when I became chief, ended up no longer in law enforcement. They decided to retire or quit when I became chief. And I think it was largely in part because they believed they weren't going to be able to work for me because I'm kind of a demanding guy. I know that's shocking, but if you ask my officers, they will tell you, all of them, I have a great crew, but they'll all tell you, man, a guy is very difficult to work for. He demands, I set a vision and then we go. We have a mission statement and we follow it. If you operate outside of it, you hear from me. If you come out and you work hard, you make arrests because we make arrests. But you also got to kiss babies and shake hands. And those things are very important to us in community policing and what we do. So I spent a couple years in patrol. Those were great years. I was OBI, drunk driving, officer of the year a couple times. Got into a group, really liked arresting people. And that's not to be mean, because none of you look familiar, except... Well, you know, he graduated in 1985. She said, we graduated together. And I looked and I went, look what we did. And it was just one of those moments. But we did graduate together, and I remember her clearly. So she was not a mope then. She was actually a very good student. So I was not in that realm. I was a kid who pulled fire alarms and ditched classes and spent a lot of time in the principal's office trying to undo myself from detentions and suspensions, believe it or not. So anyway, I spent a couple years in patrol, and then after that I spent 5 years working undercover narcotics. The absolute best job in my career, other than the gig I have right now. If you could have seen me when I worked undercover, the majority of you would have crossed the street and done everything you could have to avoid me. My goatee was down almost to my belt. It had its own zip code at one point, and there was something living in it, I'm convinced. My eyebrow was pierced, both of my ears were pierced, my hair was over my shoulders, and I rode a Harley most of the time. I spent 5 years, but I have bought more drugs than anybody in this room. Don't raise your hand, this is not a contest. I've had someone once say, I bet you haven't. I said, shh. Group here, don't out yourself. But during that time frame, I was fortunate enough to take a lot of drugs off the street, and that, probably along with growing up and being exposed to some drugs during that time, that really fueled my drive to be anti-drug. I hear a lot of talk every day about legalization, and we should legalize it and tax it. I'm a pretty straight talker. Those people are morons. They have no idea the bigger picture of things, because here's a very simple thing. When somebody talks to you about legalizing drugs, just think about this. How do the users pay for them? Because if you're creating more addicts, you're creating more need, you're creating more crimes. They can't maintain gainful employment. They're not working at McDonald's to fuel a $200 a day heroin habit. It doesn't pay enough. So once it's legalized, they come into your garages, your cars, your houses, and take the stuff that you worked for in order to go buy it. So my answer to that argument has always been, unless you're going to create a debit card for the user and pay for it federally, and we're all in favor of more federal taxes to support drug addicts, I'm positive of it. Unless you're going to create a debit card where someone can walk in and swipe it and get their bag of heroin, stop talking about making it legal, because we can't afford it. And just one more thing, and I am not an anarchist. I love this country. Holy smokes, I love America, but I do not like politicians in general. And it's fairly clear if you talk to me for any length of period of time, the politicians I gravitate to are the ones who have never lied to me. I have 2 in my life right now. All the rest of them have said something, and they didn't keep their word, and I won't. Generally, my opinion is, if you look at, and I'm still talking about drug legalization. I told you I'm ADD. If I get off in the field, bring me back. We don't have anybody who could supervise that program. All you have to do, and no disrespect to anybody, look at the management of the U.S. Postal Service, and I'll rest my case right there. So anyway, 5 years working dope, absolutely a great time. But it did fuel my desire to do more for drugs. Now, I'm telling you ahead of time, I'm not a guy who looks down on addicts. I'm actually a guy who gets them beds and recovery and rehab if I can. But if any of you have ever had an addict in your family or known an addict, you can't help them unless they're ready. It's impossible. You can take them to rehab 72 times and they'll walk 73 times out of rehab until they're right, until they're ready. So anyway, a lot of time working dope, great times. I was a pretty hairy guy at the time. Ran with some outlaw motorcycle gangs, bought a lot of drugs, bought a lot of drugs and guns and all kinds of stuff, and it was a great assignment. I got promoted to sergeant and moved out back into patrol, out of the drug unit back into patrol, which was shocking for me because I had to shave that monstrosity and take all the earrings and stuff out, and it kind of lessened the blow a little bit because my first day back in uniform was September 11, 2001. So I was actually on my way to a court appearance. I was scheduled to work in the evening, and I was listening to the radio when the first plane hit the first tower. And I remember clearly thinking, boy, that guy was way off course. I mean, you just don't hit a building that big. And by the time I got to the court appearance, one of the common pleas judges, when I walked in, I've had a decent relationship with them. He snatched me up and took me back into chambers, and we were watching it on TV, and we actually saw the second plane hit the building. And that was a very sobering moment for me. I didn't like that at all, to be as blunt and as simple as I can. But the one thing I remember, and I don't know if those of you who were in the motoring public at that time, there was a serious run on gasoline in the evening. I mean, there were gas lines. We had them backed all the way down the street, and I thought we were going to have riots for people trying to fill up. So Anyway, fast forward, I get promoted to chief in March of 2004. I'm convinced still my politicians were extremely intoxicated that day. I had a talk with them. They said, we want to promote you to chief, and I said very clearly to them, you guys have lost your minds. You lost your minds. Are you drinking? Did you drive here? All those questions came out. I think, especially our president of the board is still there, Mike Costensi. I think he saw something that I didn't see, and I'm still very grateful for him for that. But we hit the ground running, and we did a lot of wholesale changes. As I told you, our department was broken, and we had to do a lot of work. And it's not unlike any organization that you folks may work for. If you work in a broken organization and you're in a position to fix it, go to work. Like this young lady so eloquently stated, the people who bitch and complain, I like her, she's very direct. The people who bitch and complain are often the ones who aren't doing the work. And you can do one of two things. You can complain about it, or you can move forward and try to fix it. And I'm not one on sitting around and talking, regardless of my presentation here today. I would rather be working. So I snatched up some officers who I knew, who I call my stars, if you will. I knew they were going to work. I knew I was going to pile work on them, and away we went. And in the last 9 years, we've turned this thing around. We're an accredited police agency now, which, it was tough to do. All of our policies are national standards. We follow those policies. We have independent people who come in and check that we follow those policies. We have to prove that we're following the policies. And in addition to that, we built a new police building with no new taxes to anyone, and we're running within budget. In 9 years, I've never been over budget, never ran out of money, and never laid anyone off. So, but that's a team effort. My thing with leadership is very simple. You surround yourself with the best people you can, then you get out of their way. You can't micromanage thoroughbreds. You got to open the gate and let them run, because you're not going to get anywhere any other way. So that's what I've tried to do. Now we get into the Facebook portion of this thing, which is the goofiest thing I've ever seen. And I say that to everybody who asks me. I love it. I love the people. I love the interaction. You have no idea how much I laugh during the day with some of the posts and some of the, I call it shenanigans, that go on that Facebook page. I'm roaring with laughter sometimes in my office with some of the things. When we started it in late 2010, and I thought, if we could get 500 or so people to pay attention to what was going on, because everywhere I looked and everywhere I turned around and talked to people, did you see this post on Facebook? Did you see his status on Facebook? Now, not to tell you that Facebook, there are some of those posts. I saw a post yesterday that I laughed at. It said, there are things that people are saying on Facebook that they should be saying to their therapist. There are things on Facebook that I look and go, way too much information. I don't need to know any of that. Thanks. But, when I started it, there were a lot of people on it. And I thought if we could get 500 or so people to pay attention to what was going on in Brimfield, we could let them know when roads were closed. We could let them know how much snow is out there. I started giving the weather reports only because we have kids who wait on the bus. And, I know that there were people who would look and say, okay, it's 20 degrees out. It's not like you can't find this stuff. I mean, you can look, all that information you can get on your own pretty quickly. However, I was packaging it, I can say that word, and putting it on a Facebook page so everyone could take a look at it. Well, this thing just exploded. I mean, we hovered around 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 likes for quite some time, probably pretty close to a year, between, 500 and 9,000 or 10,000 likes. And I'm here to tell you, within the last year, this thing it's not unmanageable by any stretch. It just keeps adding minutes to my workday. But it is, what a ride. I mean, it has absolutely been one of the best experiences I've ever had. And I've got to meet so many new people. Here's an odd concept. The Brimfield Police Department is a destination for people. It's the weirdest thing I've ever heard. And it's not for people who are arrested, because, I mean, we're booking their flights, without their consent, really. But it's a destination. We have Saturday, a family from Tennessee drove to the Brimfield Police Department. to meet officers, have their pictures taken, see a canine, take a tour, and they went home. There wasn't a trip to Cedar Point planned in all this. There wasn't a, we're going to Kennywood after this. There was none of that. We said, well, you're from Tennessee? Yep. What are you doing here? Came to see you. Really? From Tennessee? Yep. And you have something else planned? Oh, no. No, yeah, driving home tonight. We're all floored. You know, I got an officer calling me at home going, there's a family here from Tennessee. They drove here from Tennessee. This is their landing spot. They're not going anywhere else. I said, all right, I got a uniform press, no big deal. But we're starting to see, in the last 2 weeks, we've given 59 tours of the police department. From people from Texas, Illinois, Pennsylvania, New York, Tennessee, Kentucky, Arkansas, and most of it is Connecticut. I forgot that family who decided that Brimfield was going to be the halfway point to wherever they went on vacation. So they stopped, stayed in our hotels, got an ice cream from Frank's, because now with our ticket program, that started a lot of our boost. We issue citations to kids. And when I put this out on Facebook, it was kind of tongue-in-cheek. I know that shocks you, but I said, from today forward, my officers all have a quota. This was right after the Cuyahoga Falls chief came out with the Ticket City comment. Now, I don't know the chief very well. We've talked to him, but I do know that that kind of publicity is very bad for my profession. And I say that selfishly, because as a police chief and as a police officer, when you talk about Ticket City and my guys are going to have a quota and we're going to write tickets, that reflects badly on the profession that I love. So I'm going to very subtly come back and counter that with, hey, look, we are good guys, and here's why. So I posted this great thing on Facebook. I'm just checking to make sure I'm not keeping you guys. When I start talking, so I posted on Facebook, and I said, effective tomorrow morning, my officers are going to be ordered to write as many tickets as possible. They're going to at least write, I think I put 1 or maybe 2 tickets a shift. We are going to profile. That's what I said, right in writing. We're going to profile and target a certain group. If this group is out and moving, we're going to stop them and write them a ticket. So most people, especially the people who do not like the police, they're reading that post and going, this guy is an ass. I'm going to write my congressman. I'm going to call him. I'm going to protest. And they're reading and reading and reading. They hate me, right? Last paragraph says the group we're profiling are kids 12 and under, and we're going to write them tickets for everyone we observe wearing a helmet when they ride their bikes. And the ticket is for a free ice cream cone at Frank's. We're writing tickets. We've written over 200 tickets to kids in the last 2 weeks. And the program just took off. Well, now we have people who come to Brimfield to walk through the police department and meet us and take pictures with us, which, it's really odd. I say that out of love, because we're the police, right? People are not supposed to like us very much. When they see us in their rearview mirror, they generally get sweaty. They feel nauseous. They wonder why we're going to stop them. They wonder if they're going to get a ticket. They wonder how much the ticket's going to be. And they wonder all those things in about 0.7 of a second. And time enough for us to pull off and go another direction and then go, whew, good. I knew I wasn't doing anything, jerk. What we're trying to do on this end is to show people, at least from my perspective in my department, that we do a lot more than that. We have a senior check program. We have 693 seniors, I think at this count, signed up for this program. Our officers go visit them or call them once a month, every month, without fail. They're split into districts. They visit them. We hold breakfast for them. We hold barbecues for them. We've gotten gallons of milk. We've shoveled driveways. We've taken people to the hospital in police cars to visit their husbands or wives who are in the hospital. So there's a certain portion of service to that. We do, thankfully, we added our second shop with a cop this year. So in August, we're going to be able to take 80 kids back to school shopping. I grew up a pretty poor kid. There were times in middle school, my 8th grade year, I wore the same pants most of that year. We were the working poor. Both of my parents worked. They didn't have any money. I didn't like when people said money, I thought it was some kind of mythic thing, you know, really? Money? Ha! What's that? But it's very important to me now to identify those kids and get them out for some new clothes. So we're going to take 80 kids in August, and all of them get to spend at least $100 on shirts, pants, shoes. We got a local, I can't think of another word, but beauty shop. I think it's called a salon. See? I came around. A local salon that's donating haircuts to all the kids. So when they walk back into school, these kids, instead of feeling like I'm in old clothes or somebody pointing out to them they're in old clothes, or as they used to say when I was in school, you're wearing floods. When's the flood? Because, you know, that cold growth thing is kind of odd. I mean, you go to bed 5'11" and you wake up 6'2". You have no idea how it happened. But we can get them clothes. So, and we obviously do one in December where we took 137 kids last year, and each kid got to spend $100. So we do a lot of community policing aside from a lot of arrests. I mean, our department handled 14,000 calls last year, and we arrested 1,007 people. We do not arrest Brimfield residents. I mean, we do if we have to, but we don't see them a lot as far as that interaction. We have 6 hotels and an off-ramp. 76 comes right through Brimfield. And we get a lot of college partiers. We get a lot of, we refer to them as Akronites. I was raised in Akron. I understand the concept. But, you know, they're kind of moving out to steal stuff and then going back to Akron. I'm sure Barberton experiences the same thing. But our guys make a lot of arrests. They're very, very assertive, we like to say, in both aspects, community policing and. So, anyway, Facebook, don't know where it's going. I know yesterday I was very grateful and humbled to sign a book contract out of all the things in the world. Somebody that went to Leggett, Reediger, and Central Howard is going to write a book. I was checking email today when I was sitting there, and I got somebody from Fox 8 that says, can you come on our morning show? This is all very baffling to me, just so we're very clear on this. This is not something where I jumped into social media and said, ooh, superstar. You know, I don't walk around and go, well, what can I do next to make somebody laugh? What you see with me is kind of what you get. I generally get on Facebook and say what I'm thinking. There are times where my bosses call me on the phone and go, maybe don't say what you think. But they've never told me to take something down. They've never said, we don't want you saying that. What they have clearly said is if you say it, you own it. So, you know, when the pitchforks and torches come, leave us out of the mess. And, you know, I told them that I'm very clearly responsible for what goes on the page. But I think it's striking a nerve. If I had to look at it from in general on what we write and what we post, I think that it's hitting a nerve with people. I think people in our society are looking for something that is good, that is not the cops beating somebody on the side of the road. It's not the criminal getting away with everything as usual. It's not, you know, the court system failing. It's something where they can get on. We can have some laughs. I can tell them that we're putting criminals in jail. Once they get into the judicial system, you know, we go testify and do that, but it's largely out of our hands. But I think they can feel good about things in general, plus they see a side of police officers where I post conversations that go on within the department that are quite funny. If you've not been around police officers very much, we have a very odd sense of humor. It's kind of tongue-in-cheek. Some of it's like my captain, my second in command, is the most sarcastic person. Sometimes he makes me crazy. He's very dry. He's very, hey, what do you think about this? I think it's a dumb idea. And that's all he'll say. And I got to try to figure out what he means by all this, and it's very tough to, great dude, but very sarcastic. And you'll find a lot of police, because of the things we see, have that attitude. So anyway, I don't know where we're going from here. I will tell you that if you have a business or you're involved in a business, you need to be in social media. It's where everyone's at. We have our own smartphone app. We have our own BPD phone app that you can download. You can, every time, this is the funniest thing. I tweet, right? Oh, yeah. Right. If you would have told me, I tell everybody, if you would have told me 15 years ago, hey, in 15 years you're going to be tweeting, I would have said, is there a cure? Or is it fatal? But we're actually into social media like that. We're tweeting, we're using Facebook, we have a smartphone app, because that's where my customers are. That's where people who I need to get a message to or desire to have communication with, that's where they are. You're very hard-pressed to find somebody under the age of 40-ish, maybe 50-ish in some aspects that do not have a smartphone, that do not get email on their phone, or can't text on their phone, or at the minimum, don't have an email address and get on the internet. You got to go to where your customers are. So, and that's what I tell everyone, no matter where I talk. If you want to build a business, you've got to go to where the customers are. You can't just throw up a web page and wait on traffic. Last week, in the last 7-day period, the Brimfield Police Department Facebook page had 1.1 million visits. Million with an M. Right, 1.1 million visits in 7 days. I can't explain it. If there were scientists that hooked electrodes to my head and tried to fish it out of my brain, it would, well, first of all, there'd be no readings, probably. But I don't have an answer for it. I don't, with the exception that I get on, I tell the truth. They know there's certain things about me. You will never bribe me. I won't lie. I won't cheat. I don't commit perjury. I don't do any of that stuff. I'm kind of like, I'm low-key when it comes to drama. But they know that good or bad, I'm going to tell them the truth. If we make a mistake, I'm going to be the first guy to go, hey, we dropped the ball. Here's what we did wrong. Here's what I've done to fix it. I apologize for it. Go ahead and get your jabs in. If we do something right, it's not my fault. It's my officers. And you'll see that as a constant theme on my page. I put them in a position to do well, and then I get out of their way. That's the key point. So, I think that's it. I think we can answer questions now.
I retired from field local schools in '98, and I'm amazed at the growth of Brimfield Suffield. How much has your force grown?
When I started, we had six full-time officers. We have 16 now. And the budget during '98, I was working narcotics at the time, but the budget during that time frame was well under. It was probably maybe $700,000 a year budget-wise, and we're $1.8 million, $1.9 million now. Nothing like a city. I'm sure Barberton's budget. I'm sure your budget is, well, first of all, I'm sure your budget is horrible right now. But depending on, you know, the municipality, the taxes, strong stuff, we operate solely on levies. So if all of our levies are permanent and we have the same amount of money every year, so we try to operate. But yes, the community has grown. You know, in '98, all the places that were farm fields now are houses, and a Walmart fell out of the sky in 2005. I'm not quite sure. I know I was the chief then, and I know that I'm pretty sure I saw it going up, but holy smokes, they don't mess around. Yes, sir.
When you became chief in '04, you were then known as David Blau.
I was, yeah. That was some of the confusion.
And we had a member of this club with that very same name that went to school with this gentleman right here. David Blau was a former member.
I think, and I used to get his calls all the time. Was he a B&W guy?
Yes.
Yeah. Because I would be at home sometimes, and I would pick up the phone, and they go, hey, Dave, yeah. Where are you at? Tea time's at noon. I'm like, damn, David Blau from B&W sure does golf a lot. I'm like, man, this guy golfs a lot. Because I seriously, and I don't know that he golfed that much, but I will tell you that I got 4 or 5 calls over the span of my lifetime during that time with people asking me where I was. I missed the tea time. Holy smokes, I'm in the wrong business. I did. I had a different last name. I was adopted as a child, and I reconnected with my dad's family. And one of the things that I felt was very important for my children was to be who we are. And that was a tough, I sympathize for all the ladies who have gone through it, getting married and changing your name. Holy smokes. I mean, we changed 4 names. We changed mine, my wife, and 2 of our minor kids at the time. My adult child since then I think they're both thinking about it. but we changed our names, all of us, and you should have seen that. It was like it was almost a disaster. I couldn't imagine. But the funniest story about that was, right after I changed it, because every morning I stand outside the elementary school and slap high fives with the kids. I do like 300 high fives a day. Best part of my day, by the way. But these two just beautiful little girls. She says, "Morning, Chief Blau." And the other girl said, and they're probably 6 years old, right? The other girl says, "He's not Chief Blau anymore. He changed his name to Chief Oliver." And the other little girl said, "Why did he change his name?" And the first one put her hand on her hip and said, "He got married." There you are. So I used that line later when somebody said, "You changed your name?" And I said, "Yeah, I took my husband's name." And it's just, you don't get any response from it. You just kind of get that, you know, that old saying, the dumb stare. You get that kind of. Then you got to let them off the hook because it's a minute of being uncomfortable. So yeah, but I changed it in honor of my father. My father was a World War II veteran. He fought the 6th 45th Tank Destroyer Battalion. Did a lot of time in Europe. I mean, I had almost 100 straight days on the front, and really. That's where my passion for veterans come in, not just that situation, but a lot of people I've met. We're having a giant parade, by the way. If you're a veteran, I invited a lot of people. I put it on Facebook. And my boss says, "Oh, you should have seen him the next day." I mean, I'm convinced they thought I lost my mind. They go, "What are you thinking?" I'm like, "Yeah, I wasn't thinking." I just go, "Hey, we're having a festival. Everybody show up." And then we started getting RSVPs, and hotel rooms started getting booked, and everybody, you know, now they're starting to panic. Me, I just got to set up the parade. I don't have to make elephant ears, you know. You run out of elephant ears, I guess you get more flour. All I got to do is line them up here, march them to here, we're all done. We have about 300 veterans signed up so far, and the theme of it is going to be, we're extending a welcome home to the Vietnam vets. Those are my guys. I don't think they got a great welcome coming home, so I'm going to try to fix that in one day. But we're going to have welcome home signs printed up. We're going to have all kinds of things planned for them. But then I have, one of the best parts of it is we have 19 World War II vets committed. One of them's driving. He's 92, and he's got other World War II vets in his car. He's got a classic four-door, and he's going to put them in there and drive them. I'm so excited for that day. It's going to be a blast. It is September 21st. It's part of our Brimfest, and it's going to be awesome. Yes, sir.
Did you ever think of changing your career to a stand-up comedian?
No. You know, I have met very few people in my life who believe they're where they're supposed to be as far as job profession. I've met so many people who just go, "Man, you know, it pays the bills. It pays the bills. Hey, how you doing today? Another day in paradise." You know, I've never had one day where I came to work and wished I was someplace else. I absolutely adore this job and this profession. That's why I'm so passionate about it. I'm where I'm supposed to be. If the running joke in my house, my wife will tell you word for word, if we won the lottery Saturday, I'd come to work on Monday. Now, she says you'd have to fly to see us because we meet somewhere else. But enjoy your time at work. I just have that passion for it. There's so many good things we can do out of this profession. Yes, sir.
Congratulations on your book deal, by the way. But could you say a little bit about where the proceeds of the book sale are going and how you determined that cost?
We established, my wife and I, and it just was official last Thursday, we established something called the Chief Oliver Foundation. It's a nonprofit. There's not going to be any employees. There's not going to be any red tape. There's not going to be anything associated with red tape or politics. Any proceeds that I get for book sales, for anything I do related to what I do, is going to that foundation. In turn, we are going to give it back to the community in ways of donations for Shop with a Cop, clothes for kids, but particularly what we want to do is get some relief for juvenile victims of sexual assault. The way we're going to do that is if we happen across or are otherwise informed of a victim, we're going to do some background and see what they want to do or what they like to do. And we're going to provide them that distraction. For example, if they've always wanted to be a dancer, you can bet there's going to be a year of tuition paid to a school and they're going to be gone. And we're going to pay for it out of foundation. If they've always wanted to paint, I'll resurrect Michelangelo if I have to and pay him, and I don't resurrect, by the way, that was a joke. I'll find an art teacher someplace, and we'll get them lessons, and we're going to pay for it. We're going to sustain it, so they can get their mind off of the trauma and start healing again. That's a personal thing with me. It's also my wife is a former detective, and she worked Special Victims Unit, and she worked a lot of sex crimes, and there is nothing that sustains things for the victims. There's a quick fix, and I always equate it to, you get a flat tire, you get the aerosol can to fix a flat, you plug it, and you keep driving. Well, you haven't fixed the problem. You've just patched it. We don't want to patch anything. We want to get them moving again and get them back. So if they've always wanted to take ballet, guess what? The Chief Oliver Foundation will pay for 10 years of ballet if that's what they want. But that's what the foundation is going to be about. So it's going to be all directed towards kids. I would imagine there's going to be an occasional dog that wanders in there because I like dogs. You know, some dog hit by a car, and I'm going to try to fix it or pay for it to get fixed because I'm just sappy like that. So even John Wayne had a dog in a couple movies, right? He named him Dog, but he had a dog. Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
I had an accident a few weeks back. I was on my way to Ravenna, and I've learned my lesson. I'm going to lie and say that I wasn't in Talmadge, that I was in Brimfield, because I sure, instead of getting a commenting out from the Talmadge Police Department, who were like, lady, just turn it into your insurance company, I thought someone shot at me because my whole back window blew out with a giant hole in the middle of it.
Oh.
And I was petrified, and it was right over there by Summit Racing, and she was trying to determine which jurisdiction to go to. Had I gone to you, I'm sure you would have given me a fluffy robe and made me chicken noodle soup.
I would at least hug you, as long as you wore deodorant. And didn't have gum on your lips. See, you have a history, I know. I mean, I'm an equal opportunity hugger, but gum and body odor kind of ruined it. We got any other questions? Anything else? I appreciate you guys.
Well, thank you for the entertaining comments here. We've got a little token of our appreciation on behalf of the Kiwanis.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it again. And at this time, if you would help me close the meeting.
Oh,
Pledge
absolutely.
allegiance.